Abhishek Lodha, CEO and Managing Director of realty firm Macrotech Developers, has often said that he isn't interested in his company becoming India's top builder in terms of sales bookings. This despite the fact that the company is sitting on its highest ever bookings, a feat it has managed for the last 6 quarters. But Lodha, who's been associated with the group for 12 years, would rather focus on transforming his company into a consumer goods firm, nimble-footed, agile, and accessible to consumers who want to own houses in areas they like, rather than traveling to one end of the city or its outskirts. Interestingly, Lodha is trying to realize his ambitions at a time when high income cycles and consumption demand in urban areas have moved beyond expensive FMCG items, gadgets, and even premium cars to their next stage, luxury homes. India's wealthy individuals are investing crores in their dream homes, and investors from across the world are eager to invest in these projects. Also, the realty sector itself is poised to grow threefold to $1.5 trillion by 2034, according to a recent report from Knight Frank and CII. In this episode, Lodha talks to me and my colleague Kailash Babar about the potential of India's realty sector, the challenges of the rapid, ongoing urbanization in the country, why he considers Macrotech to be a consumer goods firm, and why India's realty sector is now at a significant pivot for sustainable practices. It's Tuesday, the 14th of May. From the Economic Times, I'm your host Anirban Chowdhury. This is the Morning Brief. Hi Abhishek, very warm welcome to the Morning Brief. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Likewise, great to be with you this morning.
So, I want to start by citing a statistic, a very interesting statistic that you cited in a recent interview. You said that, Indian builders will sell about 600,000 houses this year in 2024, which is a great year for India. And China will sell, it's a bad year for China, but that means that it'll sell 1.1 crore houses. That's 20 times. So this is the potential basically that we are talking about. My question to you is, I've been hearing about this potential from a very long time in some other sectors as well. So I've been covering aviation, for instance, for 15 years. And we've always heard that Indian aircraft are a fraction of what flies in the US, So what is the potential, first of all? How does it lead to nation building, this whole potential story? Are we narrowing that gap when it comes to growth with the countries that we compare ourselves with all the time?
Great question. I'll just take a little bit of a step back to let the listeners understand where this all comes from. India has been always a low-income country, and we are now in the journey from low-income to mid-income. That journey means that people become capable of buying certain goods or services as their income grows, and that's when the consumption of those particular sectors goes up. As 10, 15, maybe 15 years ago, you started FMCG growth really expanding because people got a little richer. The first thing they bought was better soaps, better toothpaste, and so on. Then you had consumer goods growing. People were capable of buying TVs and washing machines and so on. Then you had the explosion in the entry-level cars. Then you started seeing domestic travel pick up. And now in that journey, you are seeing the fact that housing is now picking up because in the course of this decade, at the start of this decade in 2021, there were about 75 million households in India. About 25% of India's total households, which were home ownership capable, means they could afford to buy a house, or means they would have already bought it, or they could buy a new one. By the end of this decade, that number will be a staggering 150 to 170 million households. And even that is only 45% of India's households. And in 2021, the same year this statistic started off with, India sold about 400,000 homes. And imagine if you were to compound this at 20% for the whole decade, that's a very strong rate of compounding for a 10-year period. Still, totally, India can only manufacture 8 to 9 million homes or less than a crore homes. So what India can manufacture if we were to grow at 20% for a full decade is only about 80 to 90 lakh homes, which is less than 1 year of what China consumed in its worst ever year for housing, 2023. And therefore, the housing cycle is going to be a very long cycle, because the gap between people who want to buy a home versus the quantum of homes that India can produce is quite large. It's a secular long cycle, which we think is 15 plus years. And it is the main sector, I would say it would be the leading sector, which will lead India's transition from being a low-income economy to a mid-income economy.
I want to ask you about luxury housing, which seems to be the topic that everybody seems to be talking about. And this is obviously a post-COVID phenomenon where we have seen this demand increase. And correct me if I'm wrong. Some figures, sales in that segment, I think, recorded a 1.5 times growth in 2023. And the leader in that segment is obviously Bombay, where we are seeing the most demand, sales, and prices as well. Firstly, how long do you see this demand continuing, or do you see it tapering off or cooling down in the next few years? And also pricing. I mean, did you see that too cooling down? How do you see the trajectory basically in the short and medium term?
So luxury housing has, like you rightly said, done quite well over the last 2-3 years. Some of the interest in it is due to its real growth, and there is also an element of hype. The element of hype is because anecdotally it makes a lot more sense to write about 100 crore homes sold than to write about 100 homes of 1 crore each sold. So yes, luxury by definition attracts more attention, and therefore there is more interest, and therefore there's a perception that it's doing even better than it is doing, though it is doing quite well. Housing in every segment is ultimately a function of the income growth of that segment. So over the last 3-4 years, as India's economy has sort of, started, I would say, becoming structurally stronger, wealth has been created in the equity markets. Entrepreneurs are feeling strong about their businesses. Professionals are being rewarded well for what they do to run or manage those businesses. What people do when they feel wealthier is they want to improve their quality of life. And that's been really what's been driving this luxury upcycle. See, luxury by definition requires great locations. You need great, well-built product. You need great design. So there's only going to be a limited amount of luxury. See, luxury is a word which people can try to tag onto everything. But the real truth of luxury is that it is rare, it is limited in supply, and therefore our view is that it will keep doing well as long as the Indian economy does well.
Right. Just a follow-up question to that. As an investment vehicle and in terms of project level investment, is it attracting a lot of these foreign funds? We recently heard about Abu Dhabi Investment Authority tying up with Kotak AIF to invest in 4 projects. Do you think that is a good sign? And the luxury segment only, of course.
See, again, like I said, the word luxury is bandied about quite easily. What is luxury, as I said, has to be seen a lot more closely. Like a jeweler, you have to really check and see whether it is true, a real diamond or a fake diamond. So I think, the fact is that there is a lot of premium product, which sometimes people use the word luxury for. Having said that, Indian economy is attracting investment from global investors across different sectors. Real estate is also a part of that trend. And I think investment will come in for the strong brands who have a track record of delivering good product and having happy customers.
You've spoken earlier about your supermarket strategy for the company's growth. What's the genesis of this, and what's the kind of role it will play in your overall growth strategy?
Kailash, as a company, we are focused on predictable and de-risked growth. We like our growth to be granular. We don't like to over-dependence on any one location. So even our biggest project, which is Palava and Upper Thane in the extended suburbs, only contribute less than 20% of our overall sales. We don't like, too much concentration. What is the supermarket strategy? Our research and independent research tells us that typically 80% of those who are looking to buy a home want to buy their home within 2 to 4 kilometers of where they presently live. They don't want to move long distances. That's because they have a social ecosystem. If they have kids, they have an education ecosystem. Often their commute to work, they are well familiar with. So they don't want to change those things. That's like a supermarket. What does a supermarket do? A supermarket knows that it has a core radius. If you're located in a given location, within 2 to 4 kilometers of that location, people will come and buy to the supermarket. Even if you're the best supermarket in the world, it's unlikely that people will travel 20 kilometers to buy from you. They'll go to something which is more convenient to them. So that's our thought process, is that we have to be present every 2 to 4 kilometers in the cities that we are present in, which is the Mumbai region, Pune, and now Bangalore. Whether it is at the very top end of the market in premium housing, in luxury housing, or even in premium housing or mid-income housing, consumers always have the option of buying from Lodha due to the fact that we are present in the areas which they would consider living in.
I have a slightly broader question, and this relates to what you said. It's a derivative from your answer, obviously. I'd like to ask you a little bit about urbanization as a whole, right? So by 2036, it's said that 40% of our population would be living in the towns and cities. And this is a growth from 31% in 2011. Now, first of all, of course, would you call it rapid urbanization? That is another term that is being bandied about. Also, when this actually happens, when the 600 million people come to the towns and cities, will we have enough space to build homes for them? Or would that require a complete overhaul of city planning or urban planning or whatever you call it? What do you say as one of the key real estate developers in the country who's adding to nation building as well?
So I think it's a very, very important set of numbers that you just laid out, because India's urbanization is very, very significant in terms of the impact it is going to have on how our nation proceeds, what it does to our culture, how we live, and so many other impacts it's going to have beyond just this term urbanization. In terms of whether this is rapid urbanization, I would say if you look at the quantum of people moving from rural India to urban India, it is rapid. Mm-hmm. If you look at it from a percentage perspective, it's not rapid. Close to 100 years or 90 years after independence, based on the statistic you mentioned, we'd only be 40% urban. So it's not rapid urbanization from a percentage perspective. But because our population base is so large, it is a huge quantum of people. So like you rightly said, about 600 million Indians will be living in urban areas. And out of the 600 million people, that's, roughly 150 million households, which is the 150 odd million households that I mentioned in the earlier part of the conversation, which are likely to become slowly capable of buying their own home. And it's going to be requiring a huge upgradation in infrastructure to allow our cities to expand without becoming unlivable, to accommodate this kind of need for housing, workspaces, socializing spaces, cultural spaces. Positive part is that India is doing this while its economy and real incomes are growing. But imagine an urbanization where we are not growing. Right. We don't have resources. Then the quality of urbanization will be terrible. Mm-hmm. Because we are growing, because we are likely to continue on this economic direction, because incomes are likely to grow, this urbanization will become a more pleasant urbanization.
But would you call it a well-rounded growth in terms of infrastructure? I mean, we do hear that growth in infrastructure does create residential nodes, right? But at the same time, you're talking about amenities as well. For example, the recent water crisis that we had in Bangalore, etc. It's just urbanization done incorrectly, right? So that is obviously also important as we go into the rapid trajectory, right?
I couldn't agree with you more basis the example you just gave me. And I think the importance that urbanization, infrastructure, urban planning, development, whichever terminology you want to use, and so all of these words are interlinked, though slightly different, has to India's future for the next 50 years. Right. Because we are going to keep urbanizing for the next 50 years. It's not only for the next 10 years. And we have to remember that we will have to think about what we need 50 years out. Because it's very difficult to live hand to mouth and build something every 5-10 years. Abhi और लोग आने वाले हैं और रोड बना दो और लोग आने वाले हैं और पानी की पाइपलाइंस डाल दो. पर 50 साल की सोच, thinking 50 years out is not easy. Governments are voted to power for 5 years. So to think that, they will make this investment of wide roads and big power capacity and big water capacity for 50 years out, it requires leadership, it requires, vision. And I think that in order for that vision to come through, you require debate, you require conversation about this, which I think is missing. The impact of urbanization on our lives and our nation's future versus the amount of time that the best minds in the country are spending on thinking about this problem is not coherent.
Since you mentioned about urbanization and the planning around it, How important do you think it is? You are undertaking a 5,000-acre project right now, Lodha Palava. What's the future of large projects like these? And how do you expect them to contribute to the community living, infrastructure, and also to the sustainability?
Kailash, the developments at Palava is really an example of what India's urbanization should be. It's highly sustainable. Close to 100% of the power used there is renewable, 100% of the wastewater is recycled. On carbon emissions, on scope 1 and scope 2, our entire company, and we are very proud of this, we've reduced our carbon emissions and we are now net zero as of March 24, which is, really something that we think is very important for all urbanization to think about, is our impact on the environment. Palava is planned. Palava has all the thought process to make it a walkable city. So everything is within a 15-minute walk. We look at 5-minute, 10-minute, and 15-minute. It has best-in-class infrastructure. Today, close to just under 200,000 people are already living in Palava. And this is even before the big infrastructure projects are completed. Now you're going to see the Airoli tunnel opening, then you're going to see the Navi Mumbai airport opening, then we have the Vasai Alibag multimodal corridor, you have metro trail. All of these are passing through Palava. And then in 2029 or 2030, you will have the bullet train, which will have its station adjacent to Palava. So you are really going to see a project which is going to, this development, it isn't really a project, it's a development, it's a new city. Eventually it will be home to, close to 2 million people. And, Palava started off as a mid-income development. Now it's moving towards becoming a premium development. We are just launching, we've over the last 2-3 years done some very high quality housing over there, which has taken off very well. Now we are doing more, which will really show that, high quality development with good infrastructure can even happen in locations which were historically not considered to be, central.
You earlier spoke about how foreign investors, global investors, institutional investors are showing interest in participating in the Indian real estate's growth. You yourself have done fundraisings over the last 36 months, totaling more than 13,000 crore, including your IPO. How was this deployed? And what sort of war chest is available with you right now? Keeping in mind the consolidation that's going on in the market and large developers like you are being favored, how are you prepared for that?
Kailash, we've been very fortunate that right from our IPO, almost all of the world's most blue chip marquee investors have chosen to invest in the company and then repeatedly invest as we've raised more capital. As you said, we've raised about 13,000 plus crores over 4 different transactions, our IPO and then 3 subsequent QIPs. With this, we are at a situation right now where our net debt to equity is less than 0.2 times. Very, very conservative and safe. We like to keep our debt to equity very low because we believe that in a real estate business, you want to keep net debt to equity. We always want to keep it at 0.5 or below. We sit on plenty of cash on hand, and therefore we have a tremendous ability to invest, not just from these funds we've raised, but because also of the fact that we generate a lot of operating cash flow. Last year, our operating cash was about 5,700 crores. This year, for fiscal 24, we're targeting about 6,500 crores. And so the company has a very significant capability to scale up and invest in line with our aspirations of building the world's finest developments and making sure that every Indian family has access to a high quality home.
I take one question. You briefly touched upon sustainability in your 2 answers back, but I'd like you to sort of expand on it a little bit. First of all, how significant a pivot point is the real estate sector right now for more sustainable practices? And of course, how is the Lodha Group or Macrotech specifically contributing to it or being part of it?
For us, how we run our business is not just to maximize the financial bottom line. We run it to maximize the total impact on our stakeholders, which, yes, there is financial impact is very easily understood. I won't comment on it. But what we do to the environment, what we do to our society, and how we govern ourselves are equally relevant and important for us. And in that purpose, we run a variety of social impact initiatives. The Lodha Foundation does a lot of work in that, and we can have a full discussion about what the Lodha Foundation does at some point in time. As I said, on the environmental sustainability side, we are already net zero across the company for our scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. And beyond that, we take care of all other natural resources, including 100% wastewater recycling. Almost all our operational needs are covered by renewable power. We leave any development that we do greener, i.e. we will leave it with more trees than we found it with. So these are kind of the things which are inbuilt into our way of operating. And we think as the leader in the industry, when we set these standards and we communicate it, eventually people will take note. Consumers will take note and other industry participants will take note. And over time, it will help the transition of this industry to becoming a lot more sustainable and greener.
Right. Abhishek, thank you so much. This was a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
That's all for today. You were listening to this episode on The Morning Brief. It was produced by Vinayak Agarwal and sound designed by Indranil Bhattacharjee. Do like, share and subscribe. The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday to Friday on a listening platform of your choice. Keep listening. Have a good week.